Okay, thank you everyone for being here. We're going to pull up, if we could, slide 2. And there's 2 goals for the session today. The first one is to hear from a group of truly extraordinary human beings and try and understand how they achieved so much success. Hopefully we can learn something that we can take back to our daily lives. And then secondly, to make sure people understand the threats that collegiate sports are under, particularly non-basketball and non-football sports. And I'll just quickly hit, as Maya calls it, their baseball stats so they don't have to do it. I'm sure everyone knows this group of athletes. But starting with Maya Andrews, 2-time Olympic gold medalist in swimming, 4-time NCAA champ, also brilliant, went to Stanford Business School, and is now doing great things as a venture capitalist at a wonderful firm called General Catalyst. Dan Gable, an absolute icon in wrestling. 117-1 was his record in college, went on to win Olympic gold, and then transitioned into a coaching career that is pretty much unparalleled. 15 national championships at the University of Iowa, and during that time created 45 individual national champs and 12 Olympians. Next, we've got Karch Kiraly, hands down viewed to be the greatest volleyball player of all time. 3-time Olympic gold medalist, the only one to do it both in indoor volleyball and beach, and is now, also I should say, took the women's team to Olympic gold and is now coach of the men's national team. And Carl Lewis, multiple NCAA championships, 9-time Olympic gold medalist, was the gold medalist in the long jump 4 straight times, which is absolutely mind-boggling. And then likewise went on to coach at the University of Houston. I should also note he was named by the IOC as the Sportsman of the Century, and Sports Illustrated named him the Olympian of the Century. So thank you everyone for being here. If you don't mind, Carl, maybe you can kick us off. If each of the panelists could maybe just spend a couple minutes talking about your journey, what sports has meant to you, what sports has taught you about life.
Yeah. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. Sports has been interesting, and my journey is interesting as well. You know, I got started in track because my mother, back in the late 1960s, did not like the fact that girls didn't have access. So she started a track team for girls in 1968. And mostly African-American girls. And so that's kind of how it got started. You know, the long jump pit became our babysitter, so my sister and I, so that's how I got involved into it. And then I was a very late bloomer, which was an interesting process of not really having any success at any age group until really the end of high school. So I had that unique opportunity to be the person that didn't make the final, didn't make this. I was a really small kid, so that was it. And then all of a sudden I started growing and things happened. But during that process, I think I grew more than I did as an athlete because I learned that to focus on your own personal excellence. You know, if you can't win, at least you can be your best. And then, you know, going into high school, and then all of a sudden things happened so fast. You know, when I was 17, I didn't even win state. When I was 18, I was 5 in the world. And when I was 18, I made the Olympic team. So things happened, and then of course Los Angeles and all the Olympic experiences. But I think what sports taught me came from some really important people. Both of my parents were absolutely incredible, the way we were raised. And being in a family that had both parents running a club was the best thing that ever could have happened, because they didn't focus all their attention on me. I was one of the 250 kids that were on that track team. So, you know, half the time I was mad because they didn't watch my race. Then they came over and told me exactly what my race was like. But that was a good thing. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about us. And then I went on to college to meet Coach Tom Tellez. And the first thing I told him, I said I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to break Bob Beeman's world record. When I was 17, I said that. Can you help me do that? And for like a 17-year-old to think like you're going to break the biggest record in all of sports, he paused a minute and said, well, we got a lot of work to do. So what it taught me is that, first of all, I always talk about the sacrifice that was made at a young age. And, you know, when kids were out partying. I was going to a track meet. When we had graduation, I had to leave graduation early because I was going to a track meet. So all these things, and I always talked about the sacrifice you made because I wanted to be my own personal excellence. And that pays the price when you get down later because now you have choices. So it's interesting, and now that I'm coaching, something I never, ever even imagined wanting to do, not to mention doing. And I volunteered a year, and now 11 years later, I'm doing it. So it was an incredible journey, but you know what? This is something that's really important, and I'll end it on that. I won 4 Olympic gold medals in the long jump, 4 consecutive Olympics, and I won 4 here in LA, okay? But I tried 4 times. No one ever talks about it. I went to try it 4 times when I was 22 and 35. And so you know, the reason I tried that is because I didn't want to be someone that said, I wonder if I could have done that. It's better that I didn't do it because I went 4 the first time, 3 the second time, 2 the third time, and 1 the fourth time. But I think the lack of fear of failure helped me go beyond anything because I tried everything. And when I wanted to try to go for 4 gold medals in the Olympic Games, I went to Coach Tellez, and he says, I don't really know what to do. I don't know who to ask. Everyone's dead. You know? So we just kind of had to wing it, and things worked out. But I think the biggest thing, and I even tried with the athletes, it's like you can't be afraid of changing. You can't be afraid of doing something different. You can't be afraid of losing. You can't be afraid of failure. And that's the biggest lesson I got from running.
Thank you. Karch?
First of all, it's an honor to be here today with all of you, and an honor to be here with this amazing group of panelists. And I'm getting goosebumps thinking about the fact that we got to do an Olympics together, and in less than 3 years and 3 months, it's going to be right back here in LA, back in our country.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how it circles around. But you had a mother, I had a father who started me in volleyball, and it's been like a close to 60-year love affair with this sport, first as a competitor and then as a coach. And I think the beauty and the lessons that I've gotten most from competing in a sport, especially a team sport, is it's like life on fast forward. Every week we succeed or we fail. We get pushed to our limits and beyond. And it's probably here more than about anywhere else where we can find out about ourselves, see what our limits are, push and break those limits, pursue excellence, mastery, and elite performance, and just those lessons can carry over into anything. So that's why it's so important to me that as many people, as many young people, kids and teenagers as possible, have those same opportunities to learn about themselves and set themselves up for greater success in life.
Coach?
Well, I changed my conversation thinking. I forgot I'm in LA, and I was here in '84, and I was a coach of the U.S. Olympic team, wrestling, and all of a sudden it came out in the LA Times that we were picked based on statistics, the best performance team of all the sports at that particular time. And I was just sitting out there watching the conversation, and I was looking behind, and I saw that 2025, and I'm thinking 2028's coming up, and I'm thinking the same thing, that if we're going to be able to dominate in a sport, then you're going to have a lot going for you. And with that in mind, we had 9 out of 10 weight classes placed. We had 7 gold, 2 silver. 1 kid got hurt. And they picked us the best performing team of all time in LA, so in 1984. So for me, I'm going to put this message out to the people that run the sports. And obviously, we have very good wrestling going on all over the world, but we are sometimes crippled by politics and stuff like that. But at the same time, the just like Magic, the name Magic, if they're going to get 10 out of 10, it's going to take a little magic for 2028. So that's what I've been thinking, and I want that message to go out there. It's going to take a lot of help. It's going to take a lot of people caring, and it's going to take to make sure that we keep our sports in colleges so we can have world performances right here in LA 2028.
Thanks, Dan. Maya?
Thanks. It's a real pleasure to be here, and thanks all for listening. My swimming career, I started as a synchronized swimmer at the age of 5, with the legs and everything, and it was clear I liked the water, and so my parents transitioned me to full-time, we'll call it normal swimming, shortly thereafter, and stayed with that, through the end of my swimming career at the age of 23 in Rio. My career is really characterized by kind of slow and steady progress. I was never the kid that anyone had picked to be an Olympian, but I just got a little bit better every year. It was also kind of a story of continuing to advance my own ambition. My biggest goal that I could contemplate as a teenager was to swim in college, and didn't really think anything was beyond that. But the fact that that was on the table was really pivotal in keeping me going. Some high-level lessons from my time in the pool. I think one, it teaches you, and we all do some pretty brutal sports, that there's a lot of goodness and discomfort and kind of suffering in a controlled environment. That's where a lot of the magic and growth happens. The second is that, as you all know as investors, kind of the power of compounding effort and growth is really profound. And so if you can just do something well and consistently for a long time, that takes you so far, kind of regardless of the amount of underlying talent that you might have in it. And third is that there are very few traits that are actually fixed or immutable. Like even the mental toughness is a muscle that can be learned. I went from somebody that as a 10-year-old faked an asthma attack to get out of practice to being able to walk out on the pool deck at the Olympics and stay cool under pressure. So I think the power of sports is really demonstrating the ability to grow.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to take 2 minutes and maybe raise or ring the alarm bell on D1 collegiate sports here with a couple of slides. And I know some of these will be hard to read. They're in your packets, and if you don't have the slides, we can certainly get them for you. If we can pull up slide 3. This is going to be hard to read, but what this tells you, and again, we can get you the actual slides, is D1 athletic programs don't make money. So this is back in 2019, pre-COVID. This is before NIL, before the NCAA settlement. We were already in bad shape. Only 5 out of the more than 300 D1 overall athletic programs were making money, and the average deficit across all the programs was about $20 million. So we were already in bad shape. On the next slide here, and we were losing D1 sports teams. So if you look at some of these percentages, these are pretty staggering. We've lost half of our men's D1 volleyball teams. So we now, out of more than 300 D1 schools, we've got about 30 men's volleyball teams left. We've lost about half of our Division I wrestling teams on the men's side. So we've got about 80 left. We had well over 200 at one point. So again, even before what's going on today, and if we can go to the slide 5, things are getting worse. So we've got costs going up with NIL revenue sharing. So D1 programs are going to be paying collegiate athletes, and it's not just basketball and football players who are getting paid. The best athletes in all of these sports are now making money, so costs are going up, and at the same time, revenue's under pressure. And we know how schools are going to respond. We've been able to engage with a number of universities who have shared their financials with us, and they're going to cut these sports to an even more significant degree. And all the resources are going to go to football and basketball, which is great for football and basketball, but there are real reasons why we should care about this. And I'm going to go right there, which is to ask some of the panelists to make the case that people should care. Why is this important? Why does it matter that we continue to have D1 programs in these sports?
Sure, I'll kick it off. So what most people don't understand is that the US, despite all of its Olympic success, is the one major country who doesn't receive any federal funding for our Olympic programs. This is in contrast to the Great Britons, the Australias, any other major country is receiving state support there. It's really been subsidized for years by the NCAA model. And so there's certainly dimensions of it that are worth revisiting. Can I stare Andrew Luck in the face and say, hey, we deserve, as swimmers, the revenue that you're pulling into the school? Perhaps not. But I think once people understand broadly how fun it is to watch last summer in Paris and how important it is with LA coming up that we're going to mention so many times through the course of this panel, it is incredibly important, I think, to our national psyche every 4 years to watch the dominance of the athletes. And it really is it really is at risk if we don't kind of consider holistically what the impacts are as these changes play out in the model.
So we've got one point around the quality of the Olympic pipeline and the need to stay competitive at the Olympic level. Dan, maybe if we talk about wrestling, what happens if we go and we have 10 D1 programs? I mean, what does it matter? What is wrestling doing for kids, youth sports, or however you want to take it, but why should people care?
Yeah, if we get 10, we'll go down to 0, pretty much. So it's one of these things that, to me, and everybody looks at it differently, it's not about money, it's about performance, and if you have performance, you'll have money opportunities. That's the way I look at it. So for me, it's not automatically just giving kids of the ages of 17 to 22 years old money and expect them to know how to handle that. I would think that they would do a better job of listening to people, their coaches, and getting a base built. I don't think I really cared or even thought about money until I was 38 years old, even though I had some. And the reason why I had some is because I was doing good things with my life already, as far as being successful and having good parents and having good values to be able to build a championship team or build myself and then build championship teams. And for me, it was not so much building them, but it was building the people that love them. And then from there, I knew that things would go well because you're affecting a lot more than just one athlete or 10 athletes. You're affecting a lot of people. I know that when I have a big win, an athlete gets his hand raised in wrestling, I watch the kid, but I look in the crowd for his parents. I look in the crowd for his support group. And those are the ones that I really can understand the importance of what is taking place. And I feel the same way about what they're trying to do right now. And it's not been around long enough. Like I said, I was 38 before I even really knew I should what I should do with money at all. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
Well, Dan also has done an incredible amount for kids in Iowa and across the country, getting them into wrestling, which has allowed them to get somewhere in life. Wrestling, I think, according to the NCAA, is number 2 in first-gen college kids. So these are kids who really came from nothing. Thanks to people like Dan who inspired them to get into wrestling, they get into college, they go do something with their life.
Well, I'm sorry to say they're number 2, but because I want them number 1. But that's just the way I think, and that's why there's work to be done, and that's why we're here. There's work to be done, And that's why I'm looking at 2028, because if I see the statistics and if we send teams out here in 2028 and we don't do as well as we normally do, it's because of what's going on. And we need to make sure that we give those opportunities. I would love to have played basketball, but, there's 10 weight classes, starting at 125 pounds, and it goes up to 285 pounds in wrestling. So, it's one of these things that we're more for a lot of different people, because I probably wouldn't have been a great basketball player, but I probably would have in my own mind, but until I got out there and found out that I couldn't really see the basket. So that's
Okay.
kind of where I'm at.
And Karch, maybe over to you. We've got so far the Olympic pipeline, the national psyche, this idea that sports like wrestling and volleyball are a way for kids to get scholarships, to get somewhere in life. What would you add to the list on why everybody should care?
Well, I think we know that student athletes in college graduate at a much higher rate than the overall population. And they take on multiple responsibilities, multiple obligations, represent something greater than themselves. All of those set them up so well to be our future leaders in any endeavor in this country, whether it's government and politics or anything else. So there's some really powerful factors that people can gain from that, and our whole society can gain as well. So there certainly are dark clouds on the horizon, but I would say we've already touched on it. The timing, if those clouds were to come, that's the opportunity for change, for growth. When we get uncomfortable, that's when we do our best at growing. And the timing is perfect for something like this. With the Olympics coming in our home country in less than 4 years, I'd also say that that one of the solutions, and I've seen it in wrestling, I see it in volleyball, is a philanthropic answer. At Maya's school, when Stanford dropped men's volleyball a couple of years ago, all of the donors and alums and supporters raised so much money so quickly that they had no choice but to reinstate the program with their love for that particular program and that sport. Seen it in wrestling too. And so while there are these dark clouds, there are a lot of positive message that we can share, and we've got a really exciting time coming up over the next 3 years.
And Stanford just about canceled wrestling as well. And then they had a national champ and raised $15 million and it came back. Carl, over to you.
Okay, so, these are all incredible ideas, and it shows the value of why it's so important. But I'm going to give a different perspective. The reality is that the financial model is not sustainable. It's just clear. If you look at it, I think there needs to be a lot more transparency in the finances of NCAA institutions. And if you look at it, we're a business conference. Let's just be real. Football is the big sport. And football is the biggest, because of television, it is the biggest earner, but because of the way it's run, is the biggest negative on the finances. So what I've always said is that we're cutting wrestling, which costs $1 million or $2 million a year, and we're losing $15 million on the football program. So I think that what we have to do in the future is be more transparent in our finances. There needs to be actual people that are running businesses that understand the finance of how to run a department so that they could break even. Because as you said, the average athletic department runs a $15 million deficit. And what do? They throw more money at it, and then they run a larger deficit, and then they cut a small percentage, and then they run a bigger deficit. So I think we have to be honest about it. So we're not going back on the way athletes are being paid. We're not going back on what we're doing. But I think it's going to have to take a bigger thing. It's not going to just be universities. We have to, as a country, understand how important the Olympic movement is to the millions of athletes that have been in the past and will be in the future. And there needs to be more of I personally think that the public, the general public, needs to come in and help support the Olympic sports so that we can maintain those and be partners with the university in order to maintain those sports. But before that happens, there has to be financial transparency so that the public can trust that they're supporting the sports that they're cheering for every weekend. You know, we've been able to, for over 100 years, depend on the NCAA, and we've continued to chip away at that. The public does not pay for Olympic sports, and we have a volunteer financial Olympic movement. But the reality is that if we want to continue to have sports in college, there's going to have to be a public partnership that focuses specifically on Olympic sports. And there has to be financial transparency with the university so that the public can actually see, because we automatically say football makes all the money. Well, the television contracts make the money, but the reality is that we're in the Big 12. So the Big 12 television contract, we're big probably $30 million a year. Well, the lowest department in the Big 12 is probably about $75 million just for the department to run it. So that's not even half. And so when you have, number one, a program that's big, that's not earning its keep, and then when you have what's called, the Olympic sports are called non-revenue. So therefore, but the mindset is, because it's non-revenue, you're not even allowed to think of how to make it break even financially. If you have a volleyball court, where they generally don't go out and let's advertise, not just promote ticket sales, but what about that facility for advertising and promotion and partnerships with local corporations? It's not done with Olympic sports because they're considered non-revenue. So I think that there's going to have to be a completely different financial model, a partnership with the public that focuses more on the Olympic sports, because that's what it's part. And then more public transparency so that we see exactly how money is being funded and coming into sports and how it's being dispersed.
Can I add one more?
Please,
one
yeah.
more thing? So kind of zooming out maybe a couple levels further, I'm on the board of USA Swimming. We see a membership bump after every Olympics because parents and kids are watching Phelps and Katie Ledecky and Simone Manuel win golds, and then they want to put their kids into swimming. Those swimmers, for the most part, win the golds, as we've talked about, through the college pipeline. They are developed, they continue to get better because they have this environment to continue to train at a really high level, and then they can go win Olympic gold medals. And, you know, when we see that, that boosts the levels of kids' sports. For the parents in the audiences, you will be very familiar with the anxious generation. Just kids right now are not thriving, and that's really an understatement. And so I can't think of a better solution than sports. And you don't need to put your kid into sports thinking they need to go be an Olympic gold medalist, but it's going to happen for some of them. It did for all of us. And just the lessons that we've talked about that you get are important in any time period, but I can't think of a more critical time for kids to be around other kids, their peers, learning autonomy and ownership over their process, and struggling and being told, hey, what you did there was okay, let's figure out how to get better, and that not devastating them, and them actually being excited about how to progress and learn and grow. And so I can't think of a more important time for all of this to be coming to a head for kids in this country.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing, just to give you a perspective, and I think it's something that we heard from Karsh and everyone up here. You know, last year we had 2 Olympic medalists, a silver medalist and a bronze medalist at the Olympic Games on our program. And we had 2 other kids that had graduated that were there. So we had 4 people from the University of Houston in the last 4 years in the Olympics, you know, 2 medalists and 2 people. We have 115 athletes on the team. And so if you think about this, in reality, we're trying to put in the world these Olympic medalists. But those same kids were on the team. Both of them had their degrees, and they did well. But we're sending the rest of them to you. And they're their teammates. And they get the messages from watching those people on TV, watching excellence every day. So the reality, it's so much bigger, and I think that was important what you said, Karsh. It's so much bigger than even the Olympic sports of it, because they are America's leaders. And we know that, like you said, they do so much better in the workforce. They do so much better in graduation. And that's it. And the investment just from scholarships for those people is about $1.5 million a year. but look at the amount of people we're putting into the workforce, onto television and everywhere. So it's extremely important in every facet of our society.
Karch and Carl started to take us down the path of potential solutions. So what can we do about this? If we agree this is important for kids, we need kids thriving, it's a way for underprivileged kids to get to college and get somewhere in life. We need it for our Olympic pipeline. It's important for the national psyche. Lots of reasons why we need to protect collegiate sports. Carl talked about financial transparency. Karch talked about philanthropy. I do want to make you aware of one thing that the coaches associations for each of these sports are working on in DC, which is the NCAA is going for antitrust exemption. So there's one major lawsuit called the House lawsuit. There's a pending settlement. There are many behind that. So the NCAA has gone to Congress and said, you got to protect us. We need to be exempt from antitrust. An idea that the associations are working on is in exchange for protection to require that D1 schools maintain a certain number of sports and a percentage of their athletic budget. It would require transparency, to Carl's point, but that they can't get exempted from antitrust and then everybody runs and spends all of their resources and money on 2 sports, because it'd be bad for the country. So there are people here, Mike Moyer from the Coaches Association for Wrestling. He has peers at all of at organizations representing these other sports. So please reach out to us if you have an interest in getting involved in this. We do think it's important, and we think we've got some ideas on how to protect the sports. Okay, we've got some questions from the audience, and I'd say a bunch of them relate to life lessons. So just trying to get a little bit more insight into how in the world did you achieve so much success? What can we learn from that? I've read a lot of things that you all have said and watched interviews, and I think there's a lot people could take away from it. Maybe we start with Carl. Anything else you can add on advice to people who want to achieve great things, whether in sports or elsewhere?
Yeah. Well, the big thing is that work. I mean, hard work. I mean, I deal with young people, 18 to 23, and I always talk about the P word: performance, perfection, and prize. So I asked a group of kids one day, if you could win a state championship and run 10.7 or run 10.3, what would you rather do? The kids immediately said 10.7, I want the state championship, I'm happy, and they're cheering and patting each other on the back. And I said, what won state last year? And the kid said 10.5. And I said, if you had focused on the excellence, you would have had both. And so I think the thing is that we can't just be happy with being a step ahead of everyone else. Because we all in this room and all everywhere knows everyone that said, I wish I could. Or they take you to a story 30 years ago, like, remember Mrs. So-and-so. I'm sorry, I don't remember. I've been too busy. And I think we need to teach them to focus on what is your personal best and how challenging it is. When you run sprint, right? When we sprint fast, our feet touch the ground 4 to 5 times per second. So if you run incorrectly, think about how hard it is to learn how to run correctly, to learn it different, to change what you're doing, learn it, and then do it so much that you forget that you do it. That's when, and it takes time. You cannot rush that. So I think the biggest thing is work hard. It's going to take time. It's challenge. And you want to, at one time, look back on your life and say, I did everything that I could, because that's when you win.
Karch?
How many parents do we have here? Lots. How many of you coached your little ones through the task of learning to walk? Put your foot here, put your knee at this angle. No, they just do it, and they fail, and they learn like an infant, learn like a little one. Failing does not stop them. It's just feedback. And so they go about 300 times, and then they figure out how to walk. And so that's an approach that I try to have myself and with the teams I coach and the teams I was on, is failure is just simply more information. And then we can take that and get better. So being really hungry for feedback, whether it's data feedback or video feedback or anything else is super helpful for us. Hunger to learn and get those pieces of information that can help us get better.
Dan?
Once you've wrestled, everything else in life is easy. Now we're one of the tough sports. They're all tough, and a lot of them are individual, some of them are team. But, sometimes I even have to change that last word. Once you've wrestled, everything else in life is easier. And I go along with that just because there are some things that's really tough out there that's hard to handle. But just with wrestling and all the disciplines that are associated with it, and now that both genders are involved with the Olympics and with sport, it's just given everybody that same opportunity to walk down the street and feel a little bit safer, or go to work and feel a little more confident. And it's something that it's never going to go away from me. And I know that we do a very good job already with wrestling, with Mike Moyer, Rich Bender, who's head of USA Wrestling, and they work together. But we do such a good job that a lot of the other people actually get a lot of help from even wrestling, just because of the reputation of what we have. So we definitely don't want to go backwards and give less opportunity to less people, and that's the bottom line right there. And especially when you have a sport that involves lots of different sizes, both genders. And so we are not planning on going anywhere except for up.
I would just say to not underestimate the power of putting yourself in a great, excellent, structured environment. I think, when people watch the Olympics and they see these amazing moments, I always wish they could just see the alarms that go off every single morning over the last 4 years for these athletes, and the consistency at which those athletes woke up, got ready, and got in the pool or went on the court or whatever it was. That's really the magic. And I think people can kind of make too much out of these amazing moments of greatness that you get to watch every 4 years for the Olympic sports, and not enough appreciation for just what really good, consistent process can do. And I think that's really the key to any sort of sustained excellence and growth is consistency and showing up and giving yourself the time and the patience to really develop. I think one of my favorite thoughts is people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10. And it really is just an incredible testament to compounding kind of effort.
That's great. We have time for one last question. I'm going to synthesize as best I can a handful of questions which all generally ask. The idea behind the Olympic Games is global togetherness, and the U.S. is retreating from the global stage. Some of the comments are much more severe. But how should American fans handle the 2028 Olympics in the sense that the U.S. is not viewed as this great convener that it once was? Anyone who would like to jump in.
At the Olympics, it's never been about that. The U.S., the American athletes are the ones with the target on them. Everybody else wants to beat America and see them lose. And that makes us better, and we love it.
Yeah, I think that what I've noticed, and we've been, between the 4 games that I went to and the 6 since the 10 games, it's a weird thing because when everything stops, I was in Paris last summer, and I went back in September, and all these, and they found out that the Paralympics was the greatest attended ever, because so many people heard about the Olympic Games in Paris that left and said, I wanted to be a part of it. So I think during that period of time, there's kind of a suspension of reality, and people focus on the games. So it's been that way for many years, and I hope it is. And I just want to add one more thing before I go. Here's what we could do that could help Olympic sports, that could help every single American. Why don't we make tuition free in public schools? That's what we do, so everyone benefits. Because if you took the tuition cost out of college and funneled that back into Olympic sports, we wouldn't have an issue, and every American can benefit from that. So, you know, it's incredible how much college costs and the burden it puts on people. So what if we help Olympic athletes? What if we help college students? What if we help Americans? What if we help families all in one fell swoop and just make tuition free? That's something that the government could invest back into our people, and that's really the big thing.
Great. Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you again to these amazing Americans. Thank you for being here. Thanks for everything that you do.
Yeah. Just one last thing, just because, you know, we're trying to all have a good life and all have a good world. And with all these sports, and especially I know wrestling well, so what happens in Russia, what happens in Iran, you know, we actually help the global situation with our sports, because those are the main competitors for American wrestlers, those two countries. And it's a way of, I think, helping the future to get along. And I don't mind having a little peace at that level. So
Great. Thank you, Dan. Thanks, everyone.